WTWO's Beyond the Stands podcast is brought to you by Crow Equipment, Andrews Heating and Air Conditioning, Snap Home Media LLC, Sycamore Insurance Associates. Here's your host, Rick Semmler.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of WTWO's Beyond the Stands. Of course, I'm your host, Rick Semmler. Remember, you can always follow Beyond the Stands on WTWO's mywabashvalley.com. Joining me again is my friend, a guy I had on a couple weeks ago. I'm talking about Pacers pregame, postgame, and sideline reporter Jeremiah Johnson. I had him on before the Pacers took on the Cavs. The Pacers obviously beat the Cavs. We joked around that if they did well and they kept playing, we had to have him back on. I'm a little superstitious at this point with the way the Pacers are playing. So I had to bring JJ back on from his home in Indy. Jeremiah, good to see you.
Good to see you, Rick. It's always good to be talking Pacers basketball in the month of June.
You speak of that in the month of June. Usually, I mean, just based on your past and with the Pacers, you've been getting ready for the NBA draft. How cool is it this year, I mean, to be getting prepped for games and the Pacers still playing?
It's awesome. I mean, I was thinking back to so many years, you're correct, that you would do the draft workouts and people would come in and you'd interview some of them and you'd always ask them what they would think about being a Pacer. And, you know, it's kind of a fun summer activity, but it's difficult because, you know, one or two of those guys maybe joins the Pacers. Maybe none of them actually ever becomes a member of the Pacers. It's fun footage to look back on when players go to other teams and you see them that one day that they wore a Pacers practice jersey. But right now, the whole city is just captivated by the Pacers. And I think nationally, it's fun to hear the different perspective between people who cover the NBA, and they're just kind of paying attention over the playoff run. They weren't really believing in what this team could accomplish. And then now all of a sudden they're like, hey, I know they're pretty good, but they're still, you know, setting up this series as, it'll be Thunder in 4 or 5. So you still have to prove people wrong. It's all Pacers against the world a little bit, and they're used to that.
I got to ask you before we get into all the basketball talk. I told you I had the privilege to cover the 2000 NBA Finals with the Pacers, Lakers. That was something I'll never forget. Covered a lot of cool moments. You've been in the TV business for a long time. You covered the Super Bowl. A lot of cool things in your life. But how much are you trying to soak some stuff in? I mean, this doesn't happen very often. How much are you trying to soak some of this in?
Yeah, it's a little bit different than some of those other teams and runs that I've covered just because I'm so close. And I'm balancing that line of kind of being a member of the team, but then also, you know, as a reporter on the game broadcast, I do that all season long, really. I'm a member of the team, but I'm also, you don't want to be too close. So it's been an unusual dynamic. Like later today, I'm going to go and help the members of the marketing department fill up bags to hand out shirts and sunglasses and signs, flags to fans. So I have a few different responsibilities and roles, and like I said, during the finals, not broadcasting the games is a little different than the role that I have during the regular season. But you definitely want to soak it all in, take the advantage of the opportunities when people like you want you on their podcast. You got to say yes, right? I mean, we're just living in the moment right now.
I know you're not quite doing your job, but that's why I wanted to have you on. You spent all 82 games in the regular season with the Pacers, followed the postseason. Few know the Pacers like you, so you can offer insight that others can't. So you talked about the national media. It's been fun to see what they say and don't say. You know, I see it all the time, too. They might as well not play this series like the other ones because the Pacers have no chance to win, right?
Yeah, I mean, all you hear is, man, I just hope it'll go 6 games and not be a short series. No one says the Pacers could actually win this series. And it's weird because I know the Thunder are really, really good, and they won 68 games in the regular season. And the stat that's been going around that there is a little bit of an asterisk to, they've only lost 1 game against a team from the Eastern Conference. They did lose a second game, but it's one of those games that doesn't live in the record books. They lost in the Emirates NBA Cup Championship to the Milwaukee Bucks. And that specific game is giving me maybe even a little more confidence as you go into this playoff series because they've got a lot of young guys. And in that game, everything that they did well for so much of the season, they were just not able to do. They didn't hit shots, and they didn't look good at all. And so Pacers unlock a little bit of that. Can they make this team, expose them for maybe their lack of experience. They do have a lot of depth. There are a lot of similarities between the Pacers and the Thunder, but it's not like you're taking on Michael Jordan and the Bulls or Larry Bird and the Celtics. To me, I know Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the MVP, but they've not done it at this stage yet. So we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a fun matchup.
We talked about this last time I had you on, the Pacers playing that underdog role and enjoying it. You think, again, that they are enjoying this underdog role going into the NBA Finals, the team?
I mean, how could they not? I mean, that's sort of a roster filled with people who've been counted out and told they're not good enough. So many teams are built on, 1, 2, 3, number of draft picks, like the number 1 pick, the number 2 pick, the number 3 pick. Benedict Mathurin is the highest draft pick that the Pacers have, and most of the roster is guys that were drafted 10 or later, and some of them are second-round picks. So you've even got like a guy like T.J. McConnell that was not drafted at all, and here he is in his 10th NBA season. So I don't think it's going to bother them one bit that they're the underdog, that people are counting them out. It was almost unusual in that Bucks series that people were actually predicting the Pacers. I've not seen the ESPN article that always comes out before a series where all the experts pick who's going to win, but no one picked the Pacers to beat the Cavs. I do think there were a couple maybe that picked them to beat the Knicks. I didn't see that final rundown, but I'm guessing it might be a clean sweep. It's probably going to be 12-0 Thunder over the Pacers. So that'll be another good thing to put on the bulletin board.
I saw a review last night. It wasn't ESPN, but it was about 10 guys, and they had the Thunder in 5. They had the Pacers winning Game 3, and other than that, most had the Thunder in 5. So one thing I find interesting about this series, and I know you don't cover the Thunder, but you know the NBA, both these teams just 3 or 4 years ago were not good. I mean, they both were struggling. It's pretty cool to see two teams that have drafted or picked up pieces and built up to where they are today. Is that something that's pretty cool for you? Like, you're used to the mega teams and that kind of stuff. These teams have built their way up to make to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, and their fan bases were able to still sort of buy in. And for the Pacers, it wasn't a very long rebuild. I mean, there was basically 1.5 seasons where they weren't very good, and they were in a position where you're watching the NBA draft lottery thinking, what could happen if we could get a high pick? Because you acquire Tyrese Haliburton in the middle of that in February of 2022, and where your record was, you probably knew you weren't going to make a run that season. And so there probably was, let's be perfectly honest, a feeling of this is going to be a little bit of a step back before we take a step forward. But you never see the step back like that take the steps forward that they have in the progression that they have, 25 wins to 35 wins, then that next jump is the hardest. And to go from 35 to 47 and then to 50 is kind of remarkable. And on the Thunder side of it, they got really, I'm not going to say lucky, but that trade with the Clippers basically set their organization up for probably the next 20 years. I mean, they got so many draft picks that they every year are going to have 3 or 4 first-round picks, and they can't even put all those players on the roster. So what they'll inevitably do is trade 2 of them for then future first-round picks. So they'll just keep pushing it down the line, and they've done a really good job. Like, let's say right now their second-best player is Jalen Williams, and with all these draft picks, he was one in the teens. So think of all the other teams that could have had him, and the Thunder drafted him. And the other comparison, as you brought up the Thunder, is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and compare him to Tyrese Haliburton in that these were not top 5 picks. They were lottery picks, but they weren't the ones that many people thought would be face of the franchise type of players. And both teams acquired those guys via trade very early in their career. So I was doing another podcast earlier this week, and I brought this up. That's as much of a credit to the scouting department of the Pacers as it is to anyone, because you go through a background check. You build a file on each of these players, even though a lot of the times you have no chance of drafting them. So, the draft that Victor Wembanyama is in, right? okay, you didn't get the number one pick, you're not going to build a file. And in this case, that's a little bit of a stretch and maybe a little different. But you still have a profile. You still talk to them when you can. You do the interviews. And you do that with everybody that is coming out for the draft. And you find guys you really like. And the Pacers did that in 2017 with Domantas Sabonis, who had just been in the league for a year, oddly enough, with the Thunder. And they were able to trade for him. And the Thunder did that with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with the Clippers, I believe, after just one season. And they wanted him. They targeted him. They traded for him as the centerpiece of that trade. And look what the Pacers did. Tyrese Haliburton, that was in year 2, Sacramento traded him. And you don't see that very often. So to me, it was a very targeted approach by the Pacers and the Thunder that if you're going to trade a superstar type of player, and, Domantas Sabonis was an all-star. Paul George was a superstar. Those players are going to bring you back something good. The thought was not just a pick 3 years down the line, but someone who's ready to come in soon and help you win games. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Tyrese Haliburton did that for both of those teams.
I want to thank our sponsors of the show, Crow Equipment Incorporated and Andrews Heating and Air Conditioning, your 2018 American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning, building a higher standard award winner for quality and reliability you can depend on. Call Andrews Heating and Air Conditioning, 765-832-9401. Also want to thank our new sponsors of the show, Snap Home Media, LLC, and Sycamore Insurance Associates. Appreciate them getting on board. Remember, you can also...
Good job, sponsors!
You can also follow Beyond the Stands on Spotify, CastBox, Pocket Cast, and iHeartRadio. JJ's always been a big supporter of mine. I appreciate that. Okay, so 2 games because it's Eastern Conference, Western Conference. Pacers, Thunder played twice during the regular season. Thunder won both. They won in Indy, 121-14. They won in OKC at 132-111. Both those games, majority of the starters played, so we got a glimpse of what it would look like, but that is regular season. Can we take much from those 2 games?
One big qualifier, I should say, is that Chet Holmgren did not play in either of those games. So you might think that automatically tilts the scales in favor of the Thunder. I did have a takeaway, though, from the second game at Oklahoma City in late March. They didn't have Holmgren. Hartenstein barely played. I think he left in the middle of the game with a hip injury. And so that's your 2 main front court players. And what that allowed them to do, which again is a little bit scary, they played super small and so fast. I mean, you think the Pacers play fast. For that one night, they outpaced the Pacers. And so they're not going to go into this series and not play those 2 guys because they're 2 of their 5 or 6 best players. So that'll inevitably slow them down a little, which, actually, it's crazy that I'm saying this, but I'm actually glad about that. Now, if adjustments could be made, that might be something that you're watching, that as the series goes along, if the Pacers have success, maybe the Thunder play those guys less, those bigs, and they opt to go back to a super small lineup. The other thought was the December game, the day after Christmas. This is also a fun fact. These teams played December 26th. Neither of the teams in the NBA Finals were deemed worthy of a Christmas Day game when the schedule was released. The Pacers probably weren't as slighted as the Thunder. I think people in Oklahoma City really took offense to that because they went into this season. The thought was they were going to be one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the Western Conference, and they probably deserved that. But the NBA sometimes does what the NBA does with those high-profile games. But I digress. December 26th, Aaron Nesmith did not play. And the Pacers are not the same team without Aaron Nesmith. You hope with that ankle that he tweaked in the next series that he'll be 100% and ready to go. But in that game also, the Pacers led for most of the game. And I believe they were up 5 or 6 points with about 3 or 4 minutes left. And then the Thunder just came with a closing kick that, they ended up winning the game by 6 or 7 points. But I left that game feeling good about the Pacers. They'd had a good month of December, and you showed you could go toe-to-toe with the best team in the NBA that night. And then it was such a tough back-to-back because they played the Thunder at home, and then they had to go play the next night at Boston, and that was not a good game. But then they turned around and they beat Boston 2 nights later. So the takeaways are the Thunder are really good. Newsflash. They can play really, really fast, And when their shots go in, they're scary, but that doesn't always happen. So what you have to hope is they're not hot from outside the three-point arc in at least 4 of these games of the series.
Stating the obvious here, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the league's MVP, will obviously be the center of attention. He had 45 and 33 against the Pacers. Do you think they let him get his and try to contain the other guys? How do you think the Pacers try to defend him?
The main goal is don't let him get to the basket and don't let him get to the free throw line. If he's going to shoot the outside shots, just make sure they're contested and make sure that you don't foul. Easier said than done. There are going to be some times during this series, probably, if you haven't watched the Thunder, Pacers fans might be frustrated a little bit by watching him. But he has that knack. If you put your hands on him, on his waist, he's going to figure out a way to draw the contact in a way to get a foul. Now, if you show your hands, and the Pacers did a really good job against Jalen Brunson in this because he has that same skill as well. They didn't send him to the free throw line too many times, and especially the games they were successful. So, he's going to get his. You can't be frustrated, but I don't think they're going to be of the mindset, let him do what he does, take everyone else away. I tend to think it'll be more of, let's see some of these guys that haven't been on this stage. Let's see them knock down that shot. And the other thing is, you can't give up second chances. If you get a stop, you got to get the rebound because then you know what happens next. The Pacers then are off to the races.
So we talked about the Thunder. Obviously, the Pacers, it'll be Tyrese Haliburton, leading the way for them, but they got so many other guys that have been contributing this whole postseason. Maybe a guy or two you think that they really got to step it up even more in the NBA Finals for the Pacers to win this series for Indiana.
I'm really looking forward to watching Benedict Mather, and he has some personal rivalry friendships with players that he's played with, and Lou Dort is one of those, and they're both from Canada, and I've watched them exchange jerseys, I've watched them exchange playful banter, and he's a pretty serious guy, but he always gets up for that individual matchup when the Pacers play the Thunder. And he's someone, to me, again, can do things that no one else on the Pacers roster can. A little inconsistent for sure, but the highs are very high. And if he can have some highs, kind of like he did towards the end of that Knicks series, he is absolutely an X factor. And the other thing is, Miles Turner is probably the other one that I'll be watching. You know what he can do in terms of rim protection. You don't go into a game saying he has to score this amount of points. That's not a requirement for the Pacers to be successful. But again, with a guy like Holmgren potentially guarding him or Hartenstein, they're probably not going to want to get out and guard him on the three-point arc. I won't be surprised, though, if at times you see the Thunder guard a smaller player on Turner. But if the bigs are guarding him, can he confidently knock down those threes, stretch out the Thunder defense? If the pick and rolls, the pick and pops with Tyrese Haliburton are working well, it'll help the Pacers immensely.
One thing that's been key for the Pacers in this postseason run, they've won the first 2 games of every series, which really unheard of in the NBA playoffs. Obviously, winning at OKC will be very difficult. They're very good at home, tough place to play. How big? The Pacers have never won an NBA Finals road playoff game. I'm not saying they win both, but how big would a split be in OKC to start this series?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, people have asked me what I think about the series, and I really think they have it in them to go win one of those first 2 games. And you know how hard it would be if you don't to win 4 of the final 5. They did that last year in the playoffs against the Knicks, but it's not advisable at all, and I wouldn't advise it to the Pacers in this series. But I tend to think that they're not even thinking about game 2 or just win 1 of 2. They're simply focused on game 1, put everything in to that one. And the other thing the lesson they learned from the conference finals against the Boston Celtics last year is against a team of this caliber, if you get a chance to win, you have to take advantage of it. And the Pacers' numbers really go back to the regular season in early March. I mean, their clutch numbers are phenomenal. I think it's something like 17-2 in their last 19 games when a game has gone into clutch time, which is plus or minus 5 points with 5 minutes or less. I was rattling off the stats, 16-1, I think, and they lost one of those clutch games against the Knicks. But they did perform in the clutch and come from behind fashion multiple times in this playoff run. And if you go back to that Celtics series, they had game one of that series right there. And when you don't get it, it's just kind of demoralizing, similar to how it was probably demoralizing to the Knicks to lose that game to the Pacers. So if there's a game that's going to be tight, where it's one possession and the Pacers have a chance to win, I do think those are the ones that it's really important to go get. If the Pacers do have an off night, let's say they lose by 15 or 20, and everyone's going to count them out, I will not be counting them out. And you have to go back to December, early December, the last time that the Pacers lost the game by double digits and then lost the next game. Every other time since like early December, lose a game by 10 or more points, they've always won the next game. So it's crazy to say I'd rather get blown out than lose a close game, but if you're going to lose a game, I don't actually even care what the margin is, because it does have a galvanizing effect on this team.
Look at JJ throwing out the stats there. I love it. I like that. You talk about Pacers being so good in close games, and while they have a team full of good players, one of the reasons they're like that is Tyrese Haliburton. And there's been so much talk about, is he a superstar? Where's he at? Well, he gets to play in the NBA Finals, and the country gets to see him on that stage. How excited are you for him to be on this stage and be able to show people just how good he is?
Think about the 2-year run that Tyrese Haliburton is on, and you probably got to go back to the original in-season tournament. Now it's called the Emirates NBA Cup, when he sort of burst onto the scene and made the All-Star game last season in Indianapolis, and didn't just make it, he was voted a starter. So if you, at that point, if you are one of the 5 best players in the Eastern Conference, 10 in the league, I'm not sure how you're not a superstar. Was injured a little bit at times last season, had a great playoff run. You go to the Eastern Conference Finals in, your 4th NBA season. That's fantastic. You make All-NBA, which locked in a pretty huge pay raise in terms of his rookie extension. He goes to the Olympics. Didn't play a ton, but he's a gold medalist. He's going to be featured on Netflix on Starting 5 this season. I can't wait to watch that documentary, because they've got a lot of content available to them from this season. He makes All-NBA again. He's in the NBA Finals. I mean, I don't know how he's not a superstar. Like, are we just saying only 3 players in the league are superstars? Because that resume the last 2 seasons, I'll put up with pretty much anyone outside of maybe 3 or 4 players in the entire league for what he's accomplished. So, this is going to continue. This is not new. We know, as Pacers employees, fans, followers, how important he is to the Pacers. I'm glad he gets to play in the NBA Finals, but I'm more glad that he's a member of the Pacers.
I want to thank our sponsors of the show: Crow Equipment Incorporated, Snap Home Media LLC, Sycamore Insurance Associates, and Andrews Heating and Air Conditioning. So you just talked about Tyrese Haliburton being a superstars. I'm going to be honest, I'm tired of the national media saying, this is a bad series because there's no superstars. It's not good for the league. You do cover the NBA. You're around the NBA a lot more than me. I mean, what is your take on, people are like, it's going to be bad ratings, it's going to be this and that because there are no true superstars. I mean, do you get why people are saying that? I mean, what is your take on this whole, it's 2 smaller market teams and it's not good for the NBA?
One, it's lazy. I mean, Rick, I would love to be a part of some of the producer, the meetings where they come up with their rundown for what they're going to talk about on some of these ESPN shows, because how many times can you go to the same topic? And this is off topic, but I walked in yesterday, and I know you have, a lot of time to fill, but it's the week of the NBA Finals, and what are we doing? We're projecting whether Shedeur Sanders is going to be the Browns starting quarterback, and then we are breaking down the Lakers, who they should draft. Like, that's just kind of what they're going to do. So to me, they feed into this because they only want to talk about certain players or teams, and if they don't want to talk about you, then they deem you not worth the attention. What I'll say is this: it is important for this series to be close and competitive. Those are the kind of series that people want to watch. when the Warriors were just running roughshod through the NBA for a time there, as great as it was to see that star power, I didn't find some of those games that compelling. Now, the ratings, I'm not sure what you could say they were then to what this will be. But if the Pacers and Thunder play the way they are capable of, and they both do, these games are going to be great entertainment, and I think they're going to be rated better than what people think. And the other thing is, the people that are complaining about the ratings, I mean, what do they care? Like, either you want to watch it or you don't, but your bottom line isn't affected. And I would argue the NBA's isn't either, because they've already signed the future contracts for the national TV deals, and they base that on previous ratings. So the next contract comes into effect after this season. If the ratings are low for this one, they've already got the deal signed. So I don't know that it really matters. To me, it's great for the NBA that it's fresh faces. It's, what do we think about the NFL? Every team has a chance. I think this will be guaranteed to be the 7th non-repeat champion. Now, you've had some high-profile teams that have won in the last 7 years. You've had Steph Curry and the Warriors. You've had, I don't have to go back to the number of years. You've had, well, LeBron and the Lakers, one in the bubble, and you've had the Celtics. So those are some of those superstar-laden teams that have won, but you've also had some new teams. I mean, Denver won the NBA championship. Toronto won an NBA title. And you're going to have a new team that hasn't won, let's say ever, because the Thunder haven't won since they've been in Oklahoma City. The Pacers haven't won in the NBA. So they're going to have a new team win. And to me, that's good for the league. Good, competitive, hard-fought series with good basketball will be good for the league as well.
You speak of the Pacers haven't won an NBA title. You're correct. They won 3 ABA titles in the 1970s. So you've been around Indy for a long time. We both grew up in, Indy and were Pacers and Colts fans as kids. We covered a Colts Super Bowl, and you saw how the city reacted to that. You always hear the saying, in 49 states it's basketball, but this is Indiana. And I think that holds true. If the Pacers could win an NBA championship, you were around when the Colts won and you saw the city. How do you think the city and the state of Indiana would react to the Pacers winning an NBA Finals?
Well, it's just been fun to see the progression of the following of this particular team, and it'll just only continue. People, as you know, Rick, basketball-wise, for a lot of our lifetime, they would think of IU. Now, IU hasn't had a great run, but people are still diehard IU basketball fans. But the way this team plays, anyone that's a fan of any level of basketball has to love watching them play with their unselfishness and the way that they play. And there's a sense of pride if you can get there. There's already a sense of pride now with this team, because I was thinking about this morning. Some of the epic teams that we've had a chance to cover, the Colts still only won one Super Bowl. And I love that Butler group. They were second twice. The Hoosiers haven't won since 1987. Purdue made it to the final, but they lost. The Pacers in 2000 got second. So think about where this puts you if you can finish this off and win the championship. You all of a sudden vault ahead of all of those teams. And again, you're the only Pacers team. You vault past all of those heroic Pacers teams with Reggie Miller. He still, for all of his greatness, was not able to do it. So I know that they understand the significance, and you can't guarantee that you're going to get back there, even if you certainly think you're building something that is sustainable. But I don't think we could even put into words what it would mean to the fans and where it would place this group all time.
Couple more questions before I let JJ go. He's got a lot of his PR stuff, and he'll be in Oklahoma City on Sunday enjoying the NBA Finals. You spoke of Reggie Miller. Obviously, he was doing the broadcast for the Pacers-Knicks Game 6. Rick Smits was there, Jalen Rose. A lot of the former Pacer players who, like you talked about, in the Pacers' golden days, everybody loved them. How awesome is it to see those guys in the building and supporting this team and what they're doing?
Yeah, I love the connection. Sometimes when you play for multiple teams, you wonder who you're connected to, but all of those guys had a significant amount of time and an impactful time with the Pacers, and it was great to see them show up and not just be there because they were invited or maybe, it was cool to do, but they were invested in the game. They were all up cheering. they're like fans like we are right now. I mean, they enjoy watching this team play, and I appreciate that the Pacers keep them around, keep them involved. Because really, when you spend time with the Pacers, you are a part of the family. And so that was really great to see, and I look forward to seeing. Tickets are going to be crazy, and I don't even know how they're going to figure out who gets where, who gets to sit where, and whatnot. But I'm hoping to see some of those former Pacers here in Game 3 and 4.
Before I let you go, you've talked about it throughout this, but if people are watching and they think Jeremiah Johnson gave this advice, give 2 or 3 points again that you think the Pacers win the NBA Finals because of these things.
Individually, it's not breaking news to say Tyrese Haliburton has to be a main factor, and he has had some of his least productive games stat-wise against the Thunder. And so they're as equipped as anyone to throw a lot of bodies at him, a lot of length, a lot of physicality. How can the Pacers break him free and get him really involved? He's still never going to be a guy that's going to force shots. He'd rather pass than, try to do it himself, especially early in games. But I still need to probably see him be a big factor. Pace is not, it's a little bit of, it was must have against the Knicks because you had an advantage there, and it was breathtaking to watch them run at times in Game 6 because the Knicks would make a basket and then all of a sudden the Pacers would score 3 seconds later. I don't know if you're going to be able to rely on that against the Thunder. I think they've got enough guys that are going to immediately sprint back when they score or when there's a change of possession that you might not be able to rely on that. So to me, it's even more incumbent on knocking down those outside shots. The Pacers have lost 4 playoff games in 3 series, so that's amazing. But I'm pretty sure in all of those, their three-point percentage was below 30, and they had one very memorable for not so good reasons, 5 of 25 in Game 3 of the Knicks series. When they've shot high 30s, mid 30s, even up to 40% from 3, they've been really successful. And the Thunder are going to try to close the paint out. This series, to me, I would say the winner of each game is going to be the team that is more efficient from outside the arc, as long as there aren't an inordinate number of foul shots. So they say it's a make or miss league. A lot of things will go into who wins, but at the end of the day, whoever can knock down more threes and be more efficient in that area probably is going to win. And the final number to watch is probably turnovers. Since February, there was a stretch there where the Pacers set a franchise record for most consecutive games with less than 10 turnovers or 10 or fewer. And that's, for the most part, carried on in the playoffs. There were a couple of high turnover games against the Knicks. Nobody forces turnovers like the Thunder. So, and they're also, all turnovers are not created equal. If you have a turnover due to a shot clock violation or you step out of bounds, it's one thing, but you can't allow the pick 6 turnovers or the bad pass is all of a sudden a dunk the other way and all of a sudden they're going crazy at the Paycom Center. So keep an eye on the three-point percentage, keep an eye on Tyrese Haliburton, and keep an eye on the number of Pacers turnovers.
There you go. When you're watching the NBA Finals on TV, WAWV in the Wabash Valley, by the way, JJ gave you the keys to the Pacers winning this series. So when you see him do something, think of JJ. So, JJ, I appreciate you joining me as always. Enjoy the next week or so. Like I said, I got a chance to cover the 2000 NBA Finals. The Pacers didn't win, but it was still something up on my bucket list of things I got to cover. Enjoy being in Oklahoma City on Sunday. Just enjoy it all, bud.
Fun fact for those listening, when we were young whippersnappers in Terre Haute, we had crazy ideas to go follow the Colts in New England and sold our sponsorship or found sponsors that were willing to pay for it. Why haven't you done this for this trip, Rick?
I'm not as good a salesman as I was back then. How about that?
Oh, that is not true. You're even better.
Maybe I was just younger and more energy. How about that?
All right. Well, we still have our memories.
Take care of yourself, bud, and enjoy the NBA Finals. And hey, maybe in a week or so, or 10 days, if the Pacers when the Pacers win the NBA Finals, we have you back on talking about all the behind-the-scenes stuff.
All right, sounds good. Always have a lot of love for everybody in the Wabash Valley. So great to be on with you, Rick, and tell everybody at WTWO I say hello.
Will do, bud. That does it for this edition of Beyond the Stands.
WTWO's Beyond the Stands podcast is brought to you by Crow Equipment, Andrews Heating and Air Conditioning, Snap Home Media LLC, Sycamore Insurance Associates, Catch this episode again and more of Rick's interviews online at mywabashvalley.com.